Hello everyone. Today we are going to share our experience using small drones for ethnographic research in environmental conflicts. This presentation has been prepared by Jaime Paneque-Gálvez and Nicolás Vargas-Ramírez, who is speaking. We have divided our talk in 6 parts. First, we will give a general introduction on the use of ethnography in geography and on the use of drones in social sciences. Then we will present our case study in Mexico, showing the potential of small drones for ethnographic research in the context of environmental conflicts. After outlining this potential, we will present our methodological proposal for using drones, both as tools and as excuses for ethnographic research. Then we will briefly discuss how we have addressed some ethical and political concerns arising from our case study, and finally we will provide some conclusions. Ethnography has long been of interest among geographers in fieldwork research. Using technologies to gather data for ethnographic purposes, for example, sounds, images, videos, geotech data, is now commonplace for teaching and research in geography. Aerial photography, satellite imagery, geographic information systems, and global positioning system technologies coupled with ethnography have proven to be useful for the study of environmental problems of great concern to geography. Remote sensing, GIS, GPS, along with community participation, have been extensively explored in geography through participatory mapping and participatory GIS, adding or adapting ethnographic techniques. Crewed aircraft and satellites have been the main platforms for acquiring remote sensing data. Within academia, researchers and collaborators increasingly use data captured by these platforms during fieldwork, but they rarely intervene in their acquisition. However, this has changed with the popularization of small drones, which over the last decade have been widely embraced for academic application as well as for civilian purposes. The use of small drones as a research tool has boomed in many natural science disciplines such as physical geography, ecology, and environmental sciences. Drones have received far less attention in social science disciplines like human geography or anthropology, however, with relatively few well-established applications and a small community of users. Here we attend to Garrett and Anderson's call for practical exploration of methodological frontiers for using drones in geography. Specifically, we analyze the potential of small drones for ethnographic research, which remains virtually unexplored. To do so, we focus on the case of environmental conflicts. Although ethnographic approaches for documenting people's participation in community drone projects have been reported, the ethnographic potential of drones remains underexplored. Here we argue that drones could serve not just as a tool, but critically also as an excuse to gather ethnographic information that can enhance research on environmental conflicts. As we will explain, the use of drones has not only allowed us to study the territorial dimension of the environmental conflict. Critically, using drones with community members has also unveiled the presence of illegal activities whose territoriality have determined use, appropriation, and disputes across time and space. To illustrate our point, here we will show how we have used small drones in an environmental conflict in Mexico, and how this technology has become key for conducting ethnography. We illustrate drones' potential for ethnographic research based on insights from La Mincita environmental conflict, a case study where we have been working since May 2016 with the Comunidad Ecológica Jardines de La Mincita, one of the agents engaged in the conflict. La Mincita refers to a set of springs, which are the main drinking water source for Morelia, Michoacán's capital city, central Mexico. The environmental conflict causes are rooted in historical land ownership disputes, urban sprawl, environmental regulations issued to deter land use changes, and disputes towards use, control, and distribution of water. Building from our fieldwork experience, we illustrate how small drones may be used not just as a tool, but also as an excuse to conduct ethnographic research in environmental conflicts. We illustrate such potential in 3 general phases related to the operation of small drones: before takeoff, flight planning, during flights, and after landing. For each phase, we report how drones have become key to better understanding previously unnoticed agents, strategies, and illegal activities in La Mincita's environmental conflict, both in other investigations and in the first stage of our own research. Organized crime and drug cartels activities in Michoacán hardly go unnoticed, but assessing their influence or even their presence in a specific research site is a challenging ethnographic enterprise. Asking the wrong questions in the wrong place to the wrong people could trigger unwanted results that could both endanger researchers' and collaborators' lives and put local people and their properties under severe risk. Thus, being aware of organized crime and drug cartels' influence and presence is paramount to ensure safety, especially given their current increasingly military capacity and territorial control strategies in Mexico. Flying unwittingly a drone over people could be perceived as a hostile intrusion, even if used in compliance with regulations. If people engaged in illegal activities are accidentally overflown, violence against the drone or its operators can be expected, especially now that small drones are becoming part of the narco warfare in Michoacán. As a result, flying a drone in context of environmental conflict over narco gangs are present requires careful planning. In our case, we decided from the onset to fly drones only with local people collaboration. We engaged them in basic training so that they could also fly the drones and use and process the territorial data collected. Before flying drones over new areas, we have planned the flights through participatory mapping using very high spatial resolution satellite imagery. This process has allowed our collaborators to better understand the risks involved in flying a drone, how we could compromise our safety if we ignored the presence of people who might be uncomfortable by drones use, and the importance of being transparent about the presence of such people. The participatory planning of drone flights has also allowed us to make questions which would have otherwise been too sensitive for our collaborators and probably unethical for us to ask. Our interest in using drones was originally aimed at ensuring the safe use of drones for cartographic and audiovisual production in the context of community-based environmental monitoring. The information we co-produced during this process shifted our interest towards environmental conflict research, given that through the drones we identified ethnographic information gaps for understanding the causes and agents involved in the conflict. Such gaps prevented efforts to resolve the conflict, fostering ecosystem deterioration as well as governmental environmental agencies' absence. The questions we asked during participatory drone flights planning unveiled the presence of organized crime and drug cartels in the area and let us know how their location and activities influenced the legal disputes over land property and land use around La Mincita. This allowed us to gather local spatial knowledge previously unreported by the other investigations in La Mincita that had employed ethnographic methods too. For example, we found that a local narco boss ordered in 2012 that disputes regarding land property in informal settlements surrounding La Mincita should only be handled in court to avoid police attention. Drones flights planning were a motivation and an excuse to inform us about dynamics and agents that otherwise would probably not have been openly disclosed despite we have maintained a long-term, constant and close collaborative relationship with our collaborators, which has enabled us to realize in-depth ethnographic fieldwork and pursue engaged scholarship. We claim that our use of small drones as an excuse has revealed sensitive information that otherwise would have remained concealed should we have employed the drone merely as a tool or conducted traditional ethnography without a drone. The drones we have used with our collaborators do not fly longer than 20 to 25 minutes probability and by national law can neither fly higher than 122 meters above the ground nor further than 457 meters away from the pilot. Our main interest in drones was the mapping and audiovisual data they could collect. Therefore, at first we just acknowledged their ethnographic value after landing and data processing. We soon became aware of the ethnographic potential of drones during flights when their aerial perspective helped our collaborators to share with us more easily their local spatial knowledge about the ecological diversity and environmental problems of La Mincita. But being simultaneously drone pilots or co-pilots plus ethnographers has been challenging because a safe flight depends entirely on the concentration of those using the drone. Relevant ethnographic information emerged during our first flights with our collaborators, but it was difficult to recall it accurately after landing. At first, our collaborators were also more attentive to the drone's operation and to the images it transmitted live during flights. But as the novelty wore off, their attention waned, especially during mapping flights. This prompted us to explore how to refocus their attention and to record dialogues occurring at the drone's ground control station during flights. We agreed with our collaborators to use voice recorders as well as apps capable to record screen audio and video from the mobile devices used for piloting. This allowed us to better document conversation during flights and refocus our collaborators' attention during flights. Thanks to ethnography during flights, our collaborators informed us of the location of suspected narco-safe houses and gave us useful clues to identify others in the area. We also identified environmental impacts on the springs of La Mincita, linked with urban sprawl, deforestation, and arson. We also gain a deeper understanding of causes and perpetrators. Recording conversations at the ground control station ensured greater accuracy during ethnographic data analysis and help us pinpoint information gaps for further research with traditional ethnographic methods. Participatory mapping is pretty much about talking and listening to people, regardless of whether a blank sheet or a base map is used or not to assist in the process. In the participatory mapping workshops conducted with our collaborators, we use photogrammetrically generated drone orthomosaics as base maps, as well as publicly available geographic information about La Mincita. The highly detailed spatial and temporal resolution enabled by the drone allowed our collaborators to better understand maps. Because of this understanding, they share their local spatial knowledge with us more readily than in flight planning workshops where we use satellite imagery available in Google Earth and Bing as base maps. We were also able to inquire about agents and causes involved in recent evident environmental impacts such as fires and agriculture occurring inside natural protected areas. Some of those impacts had sometimes gone unnoticed by our collaborators and by us until we flew the drones and processed and analyzed the obtained data. Thus, the geographic information we co-produced triggered new questions and helped us to foresee knowledge gaps that needed to be filled with other ethnographic methods. The recording technologies and ethnographic methods we used before drone takeoff and after landing are well established. Accordingly, we have only applied or adapted them to our research using drones. Hence, here we focus on our methodological proposal to perform ethnography during flights. This proposal builds up from our community drones approach, where local people collaboration is key. We foresee three possible roles to use drones to perform ethnography in accordance with researchers in yellow and collaborators in gray roles during flights: drone pilot, drone copilot, and participant observer. Each one of them have implications about who controls the flight path execution, which elements or situation will be considered of interest from the aerial perspective, and how collaborators and ethnographers could influence the flight planning and its modification. Depending on each role, accessories may be added to help both the researcher and the collaborators watch the drone live broadcasts, to record audio or video of situations and conversations happening towards drone use, or to take ethnographic notes. In our case study, our main role was being pilots and sometimes co-pilots. We have sought to produce valuable ethnographic knowledge beyond academia, so our research design brought together approaches from participatory action research, activist research, and engaged ethnography. We co-produce our research design with our collaborators' participation to meet both their needs and expectations and our research aims. We attend the ethical and political concerns that emerged during our case study following the appropriate practices we have developed for community drones use, as well as 5 principles of our university's Code of Ethics. Some outcomes of our approach implies that drones use depends on our collaborator request, and we never use them around their territory without their direct participation and consent for planning and flight execution. We also consider drone flying heights in order to avoid capturing data, consciously or not, likely to be classified as human subject research. We have also agreed that audiovisual and cartographic data property obtained with drones belong to our collaborators instead of us. Data rights for use and dissemination beyond our academic publications remain entirely at their discretion. Drones are not just tools, but also an excuse to gather ethnographic information that may improve the study of environmental conflicts. Drones' potential will be strongly determined by the research design, by the researcher's role during drone flights, pilot, co-pilot, or participant observer, as well as by drone regulations and social science research ethic advancements. Our case study illustrates the power and influence that can be exerted by the aerial perspective offered by small drones in an environmental conflict. By using them both as excuses and tools for ethnographic research, our grasp of its complexity has been deepened, and the local knowledge of our collaborators has been enriched. Such power, however, entails a great responsibility for researchers and collaborators using drones in the context of environmental conflicts. Despite small drones could enhance researchers' and collaborators' reach and senses, flying them is unlikely to go unnoticed from the ground. Unsafe and unexpected situations can be triggered when small drones are used for ethnographic research in environmental conflicts. and that's why we think it is paramount to attend to ethical principles and regulations to safeguard privacy and rights of involved people when using small drones for ethnographic research. Thank you for your attention.